This message is for the ladies and some of you gay men as well. I know it's rather sexist to be putting it out to a demographic, but unfortunately, I see this too often to not be calling it out that there are amazing, super smart women in business who undervalue what they do, who downplay and don't ask for as big of money as their male counterparts. And this is a reality. We talk about the gender gap, we talk about the wage gap, and yet the reality is that in business, we're the ones doing it to ourselves. And I know I'm guilty. I have been guilty, and maybe I'm still guilty of that. But this piece of leaning in and asking for what is equivalent to our value, I had this driven home. So I had a conversation with an amazing, super smart engineer woman. She's been in the industry for 25 years. She has an incredible track record. And she was telling me about going in and cleaning things up that, she's the person to go and clean up the fires. So they've already had an engineering team come in. They've spent upwards of 90 million pounds on a conversion for automation, but it doesn't quite do what it needed to do. And so she comes in and they're like, okay, well, we don't have much of a budget because of course they've already spent 90 million pounds. And so they come in with a budget of 3 million pounds and she manages to pull off the miracles. And this happens not just once, this is happening over and over again. And so we're having a conversation about how frustrated she is that she's the one on the back end cleaning these pieces up, and she wants to be the one leading the projects in the first place. And in the discussion with her, there's a lot of, this pushback around, oh, how much can I ask for? And, all the things around money. And I could really hear that ingrained pattern of don't ask for too much, hold back, wait for yourself, wait to be recognized, wait for your value to be recognized. And, to be fair, we kind of come by it honestly. This is a lot of our genetic programming through the years that, it's really honestly only been in the last 100 years that women have been part of the workforce, that women have been out there leading things as far as economic force. So it's fair that we're probably going to be still, finding our strength, taking our Bambi legs and getting them less wobbly. But this is what I love doing with people, is getting them to see that all of these things that they've talked about is a huge value, and it's a way for them to position the cost, the what they charge. It's not about charge what you're worth, which I think is absolute bullshit and disempowering way to look at it personally, but looking at, what is it that you deliver? What is the value? What is the shift that you give them? What is the results? And then really honestly evaluating and saying, okay, well, what am I saving people? What am I allowing them to make? And to lean in and own it, to really own it from this place of quiet confidence. Okay, so this is the place that I call the inner dominatrix, that quiet confidence, the willingness to stand in your expertise, the willingness to be judged, right? As you say what your fees are, the willingness to be judged for that, the willingness to put yourself out there. All of these pieces come as we do this inner work to grow who we are, because then we're willing to take the steps. The strategy, I really believe that the strategy part of business is actually quite simple. And, it's straightforward. You can look at it from the outside and you can say logically, okay, these are the steps. This is what I need to do. But if you're not actually doing it, if you're not actually implementing those easy, simple strategy steps, and simple, maybe they take time, maybe they take money, but if you're not automatically just moving into action, super easy, super flow, then perhaps there's some pieces internally that's going on that are getting pushed on, getting triggered. And yeah, you know what? We're going to talk about the emotions of this here. When our emotional state gets triggered, when we have things in our past that get poked at as we try to rise up, like I'll pull my own example. So having grown up in a cult that said women are second-class citizens, It's taken a lot of programming for me to figure out, and of course I did it the hard way. I had to do it the DIY method. So much easier if you work with somebody. Just an FYI. Is that I had to change all that programming that said, as a second class citizen, that, I wasn't allowed to go for what I wanted. I wasn't allowed to be out there. I wasn't allowed to be successful. And I had to change those pieces. So every time that I tried to like up level my business, or, I'd have growth in one area, but then other things would fall apart. Or, there were these pieces that would show up as a result because I hadn't quite healed that programming. Now, as I've healed the programming from the cult, it's become easier and easier for me to grow my business. It's easier and easier for me to get out there, get visible, say what it is that I do, really command my space. And am I perfect? No, we're still a work in progress. However, it has changed dynamically. Now, you don't have to have grown up in a cult to be, set with these kinds of programming, because look at media images, look at, what is the messages that we grew up with as kids. What were the messages in the movies? If you grew up in the 50s and 60s, what were the messages in the movies those days, right? There weren't a lot of women working out in the workforce. So you weren't shown role models to follow. And even we go to the 80s, which is, the era that I was in high school, and through the 80s and early 90s, women were really quite catty, and there was a lot of, backstabbing and clawing at each other, trying to get ahead, because we hadn't learned, and there's still some room for growth here, but we hadn't learned how to be supportive of one another. And I think that some of this is that, all the global shift, but also figuring out our way, and, what does it mean to stand in our power without being called a bitch? And there's a lot of layers in here that we need to navigate, and becoming comfortable with being judged. I would say that's probably the biggest thing that you can be working on in your business and for yourself, because you're never going to not be judged. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. It's human nature. They're going to judge you. They're going to judge you because you're blonde. They're going to judge you because you're brown, because you're black, because you're not green, because you're, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are or how you show up. There will be something somewhere that someone has a judgment of. So the moment that you can just take that deep breath, let yourself create some space and welcome in that judgment, the easier it's going to be for you to start to stand in your expertise. All right, so there's your nugget for today. I want you to really breathe into that, expand out, imagine welcoming in people's judgments, allowing them to just be fuel, to fuel your business forward faster. And if you need help with this, I would love to have a conversation with you and talk about what's the next steps. If this feels right for you, what's the next steps to really get you into your body, into your growth, and having fun in your business again. Head over to bookdana.in. Have a good one.